is Matt. I'm the one usually behind the camera for these AQ videos, but I'm here today with Simon, and I'm out on my very first splitboard mission, lifelong snowboarder, resort rider primarily. So this is definitely a bit of a change up for me. We're here at Chester Lake, just the very first early season splitboard mission today. Learn some of the essentials, some of the basics of skinning and getting the board together. Try not to make too much of a fool of myself. So it should be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to it. Just to barely see the edge?
Yeah.
Okay. Simple enough.
Much more successful than lots of first tries we see.
Good. Halfway legit that thing. Except for that.
The backpack leaves a little bit to be desired.
Yeah.
We got to work on that, Matt.
The backpack is definitely not backcountry approved. More like high school.
Yeah.
High school approved only.
I think Travis, my 8-year-old, has a bigger touring backpack than you.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So think glide, not step.
Okay.
Yeah. Beautiful. So when we're skiing downhill with skins on, we're going to try and keep a little bit of flexion in our knees so that when the skins grab and we decelerate, we don't just fall forwards, we just kind of come to a stop and stand up. Whereas if I'm up here and I stop, my feet want to go forwards and I tend to end up hands and knees on the ground. So we keep a little bend and glide. Yeah, Matt. Yeah! What we're doing here is we've been sort of skinning up a summer trail, as you can see, so it's pretty mindless, just moving. We're now looking to show Matt how you start to gain elevation in an effective way. So our brain wants us to go straight up because that's the path of least resistance, but we're actually trying to set a pretty low angle track and zigzag and contour using the terrain. So where we're actually trying to get to is up over here. We could have tried to access it from the bottom of this hill straight up, but instead we use this easy terrain to get us to a higher point where we can just do a couple of short, low angle zigzags to gain that elevation. You can see in front of me here, I've got a big draw where there's no trees. So it's nice, easy travel rather than trying to like bushwhack through the trees and that kind of thing. We're just always looking for that low angle path of least resistance. So lots of people, when they first start out, are really keen to learn about how to do a kick turn. It is an important piece of splitboarding and backcountry skiing. However, at the start, if we can avoid it, actually continuing, if we can avoid kick turns, it saves a lot of energy. A kick turn happens in steeper terrain, but what we're trying to aim for is if we can aim for this lower angle stuff and make nice round corners, that's going to make our life much easier and we're going to use a lot less energy. So here I'm looking for the flattest spot that I can, and it's allowing me to put my skis, because it's flat, I can put my skis straight uphill and it's not hard work and I'm not going to be sliding. And then I slowly step around, and then that puts me in the next spot that I need to be. So you see this curve, like it's an arc rather than like a hard turn, which we'll show you later on. But we're looking for those round turns when we need to turn, and the way we do that is turn in flatter spots. So Matt's found a nice flat spot. Just slowly stepping around the tree. No need for anything fancy. And then back into that like nice low angle draw up through the trees. You. Success. We're just stopping for our first break of the day. We've actually got a glorious day. It's probably, I don't have a thermometer here, but it's probably like -7. In the sun, it feels really, really nice. We're stopping for a break, so we're probably going to stop for 15 minutes or so and look at some Avi gear and everything. So a good habit to get into when you are stopping is just to have a warm layer that you can just throw on really quickly so that you don't lose that body temperature, right? So I just have a pretty lightweight down jacket here for today, and it's just sort of maintaining that body temperature throughout the day. We're looking at just some of the gear that we're carrying, the AVI safety gear. Just to preface this, I'm not a ski guide. I do teach AST courses. I've kind of been splitboarding and ski touring and stuff for 20 something years. So you have to take all this with a bit of a recreational grain of salt. So my backpack here, this is actually your first bit of safety gear in a lot of ways. You have a backpack with 2 separate compartments. It has this compartment that's just set up for my avalanche safety gear, my shovel and my probe. So in a situation where something does go down, if it does go down, I have everything separate. I'm not having to peel my lunch out or my extra layers out and having it sitting in the snow, potentially getting buried. Okay, yeah, so in here, that's all I carry in that pocket is just simply a probe and a shovel. It's really important to try and keep all your gear inside your pack. It's Matt's first day out. We see this all the time, and no judgment, I promise. A few reasons to have your gear inside the pack is that A, it's a hooking hazard, like if you're skiing in trees and you're skiing fast and you hook the handle of your shovel or something, it can be a very abrupt stop and you could potentially injure yourself. The other thing is if you did happen to get into a situation where you're in an avalanche, it's much easier that you'd lose your gear and then you're no longer an effective piece of the rescue team if you do get yourself extracted. So we want to try and keep everything inside the backpack as much as possible. Shovels, they break down into a blade and a handle. This is a nice big shovel blade. And then you also, many of them will have an extendable handle. If you've ever dug for any period of time, these longer handles are worth their weight in gold. The shorter ones are just so much harder on your back and such. You'll get the right size for yourself. I like this sort of larger shovel blade, moves more snow more quickly for me. Smaller people might prefer a smaller blade. And then we have our probe. Okay, so probes, we recommend 3 meters in length. Even here in the Rockies where the snowpack's not typically that deep, if you do have an avalanche, you don't want to run out of probe, right? So 3 meters or so, 280 some people carry, but 3 meters is pretty standard, pretty par for the course. They go together like tent poles, which doesn't mean like this. You don't put them together like segment by segment. That's very, very time consuming. Okay, typically you try and throw them, we don't have a downhill here, but you throw them downhill and then they'll have different mechanisms, but you basically pull up through the probe and then there'll be some kind of locking mechanism. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to get Matt to do his, and we'll see how that goes without any training, because it's a different mechanism than this one here. You'll also notice I didn't have it in the probe bag. Probes always come in bags. That's just an additional piece of gear that you've got to try and get to if you need to. My demonstration here isn't actually great. I don't have any gloves on. I should be doing this with gloves on because in a real life scenario we would have gloves on. So yeah, again, take my information with a grain of salt. On all of these probes I'll have depth markers, so we can use this just to simply test the depth of the snow, which is not very at the moment. Make sure they're long enough and that they're easy to access in your pack. So time is of the essence in avalanche safety. If you can,
Wait, don't put them in the bag?
Here's the bag. Yeah,
I do have gloves on though.
he does, which is better than my example. So thank you, Matt.
I've got one bonus point.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to just whip this out.
Yeah. More or less.
Whoa. Hey.
There we go. Now test it. So try and pull the segments apart. Good. So you used the locking mechanism at the top correctly. Yeah. It is important that you really play around with your gear because those locking mechanisms differ from model to model and brand to brand. Nice work. Well done. Right. But the lesson we learned here is, if at all possible, ditch the bag because it's just additional time. The last piece, I guess, is we have our transceivers on us. You'll notice here, I have it on my base layer, but all of my layers above have a zip. It's not like I don't have a sweater over the top or something, because then I'm having to pull in underneath here. So it's in its harness, it's next to my body, and it's easily accessible through these zipped layers. I don't want it under something that doesn't have a zip. Some people put them in their pockets and hook them in their pockets. That's perfectly fine as well. You just kind of want it attached to your person, because if you do get ragdolled in an avalanche, you don't want there to be any chance that it becomes separated from you. So yeah, simple harness, easy to access, pull out and use. Just as a heads up, we'll replicate this here, but one of the first things that we do when we get to a trailhead is we make sure that everyone's transceivers are turned on. We put it in search mode and we make sure that everyone's transceivers are transmitting correctly before we even leave the parking lot. I've seen a lot of times where people are like turning their transceivers on an hour into their day. Even if you're not moving through avalanche terrain, it would be a very sad thing if you forgot to do that and wound up getting in trouble because you just didn't use the gear properly. So transceivers on, make sure everyone's transmitting properly before you leave the parking lot.
33, 34, 36, oh, there we go.
So he's keeping the transceiver nice and flat, keeping it oriented with his shoulders. He's still following the arrows. He's kind of reached that 10-meter zone. Replicating an avalanche here, taking his skis off so that he's more mobile. When he hits that 3-meter zone, he's now going to sort of bracket search. He's just looking at those numbers getting lower and lower. At some point, they're going to go up. So he's going back to his marked low point. He's cancelled out in front and behind. His number's getting bigger, so he's cancelled to his left. Cancelled to his right. And there's his low point. He's going to mark that with his pole. And then he's going to get out his probe and go from there. Throwing the probe out. Make sure it's locked. And then that's where he'd start probing.
Just some amazing terrain all around us. I don't do a lot of snowshoeing or winter hiking in general, so for me, just being able to access this kind of terrain and be out here where it's beautiful and peaceful, this is definitely one of the best parts of the whole experience. We haven't even put the board together yet, and I'm having a ton of fun. What a day. All right, so I've managed to make it up to some terrain I can ride, do a couple turns on. It's hard to do this with one hand. And there we go. Dropping. Not a bad spot to be for the day. It's a little sketchy. I haven't skied since grade 7, so it's been a few years. Not very graceful, but it survived. All right, we're flipping it back into snowboard mode since it's getting a little steeper, and I am not a good skier, particularly on a split board. So yeah, quick transition here into snowboard mode, and then we're good to go. Ready to board. Made it down to the bottom and I'm still in one piece, so that's a good sign. I'd say this is a successful first day out on the split board, and I'm really stoked to have a few more days and get some more experience.
It was a great day, sun was out, no carnage.
No carnage.
Some good skill development. Had a good time, it was really good. It's always nice to, still super early season, so the skiing wasn't ideal for Matt, but it was a very good day out.
Nice. Awesome first day. Super stoked.